starting over. Hi. Thanks for being
Hi.
here. Everything's better. Yay. Thanks, Paula. Thanks, Lori. So on Tuesdays in the before times, I used to have time in a coffee shop where people could drop in and chat with me. And then I started doing it on Facebook Live once people were stuck in their homes. But it was also a lot of me talking to the screen and talking to comments. And I missed having the opportunity to talk with people.
Totally.
And I asked people, are there particular subjects or things that you would like some space for conversation about? This is one of the few opportunities that we have these days to have kind of a bigger conversation with people that we know. Zoom calls and Facebook Lives are basically the way we do these things now. And members of my congregation put forth a lot of suggestions for a lot of the different topics and issues that we're dealing with in 2020. And one of them came from some parents actually in my congregation who said, how on earth do you cope with boredom? The need, how do you find creative ways beyond the first 6 weeks of this when we all had our creative ideas to keep something, some spark or something new in your life outside of the 7 things that we all figured out how to do, like bake bread or whatever else we were doing at the beginning of the pandemic.
Lucky people, those people though, the
baking
ones who
bread.
Really figured out how to bake the bread. I don't know.
I never did that either. I didn't bake any bread.
I definitely did it, but I would not identify as having quote figured it out.
Yeah,
bless those people.
You already baked bread before the pandemic.
This winter, croissants. It's coming. Cheese Danish. These are my hopes and aspirations.
Homemade
Do you just
Cheetos.
Google it? Do you just Google it and YouTube it and figure out how to make a cheese Danish?
Definitely. And I have a rigorous, trusted, King Arthur Baking, New York Times, blah, blah, people who I'm that recipe is not going to lead me astray. And I stay away from
allrecipes.com.
Yeah, or blogs that have 40 million reflections about something that's not the recipe first.
Why is that every food blog? That is every recipe blog.
It's capitalism.
It is. Yeah, it's AdWords. It's search terms. But yes, anyway. So croissant baking is a great example. So when one of my congregants suggested that we talk about ways to keep boredom at bay, I was like, who on earth am I going to talk to about that? And then I remembered that all throughout these last 6 months, I've seen the two of you sharing on social media all kinds of wild and crazy things that are happening in your home. So you two are both ministers, but that's not necessarily why I asked you to have this conversation. It's more about who you are as people and what is going on in your house these past 6 months. So after that very long introduction, could you guys tell us all a bit about where you live and who lives with you and what's kind of going on in your house these days?
Sure, yeah. We live in Boston, Massachusetts, on Massachusetts and Wampanoag land. And we live with 2 other religious professionals, Annie's partner, Lucas, who's our director of religious education, and our dear friend, Joe, who is a hospital chaplain. And then previously mentioned Moira, 5-year-old kiddo. And yeah, I think, wait, was there anything else?
Where you live and who lives with you and what's going on in your house these days? Do all those people work at home? Is anybody schooling from home?
So Joe, the hospital chaplain, works in the hospital and did throughout the pandemic. She went in regularly, which was very intense, obviously, during the peak in Boston. The rest of us have been working from home. Elizabeth already worked from home because she works for a national social justice organization, and Lucas and I both work in churches, and so it was fairly easy to transition to working from home. We do a lot of Zoom worship and Zoom meetings, as you might be also doing. And then Moira dropped out of preschool, dropped out. She pandemicked out of preschool and has just this week started Zoom kindergarten. Before that, she was just being a child at home every day.
You can maybe, if people are, I don't know what, here's the little tour of there's Moira's play area. This is the multi-purpose work from home kitchen table that I think is in its natural state.
Yep. And then sometimes there's one person in the guest room on one call, one person in the dining room on another call, and another person in like the living room and the kitchen, and Zooming.
So you have 4 adults and 1 child in the house, sounds like, and one adult working outside of the house, the other 3 doing various things of working from home. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That is a lot. How long is Moira in school for out of the day? Is it a half day or a couple hours or a full day?
They're building up to a longer day. So like yesterday she had like, I think like half an hour or an hour, and today she had like an hour and a half, and they're kind of trying to increase it over time.
Hour and a half. So not very long. Yeah.
Not very long. Not yet. No.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot. That's a lot going on in one home.
Yeah, we have full lives, and I also, we also know lots of people who have had no choice but to work outside the home, and in our context, like taking public transit, working jobs that just have a high level of exposure, whether that's like in the service industry or housekeeping or things like that. So it is like a full house, but I think we're also super privileged and lucky. We also have a backyard and a front porch, which we have like really used and are committed to using through the winter. We are like team fire pit, many blankets, like put your socks on. We are going to be outside distance, drinking all the hot apple cider. We got some twinkly lights for our front porch. I just put in a bulk order of IKEA candles that you'd be very proud of, Lee.
I did the exact same thing.
We are committed. And I feel like that is one of the things about like boredom, of like, it is a discipline in a lot of ways. Like, it's not just like, oh, it's like, it's like supposed to be fun. You probably have seen like some themed parties and like, games and stuff and costumes. And, but it's also like a discipline of like, I think we feel really strongly like we are not going to surrender joy in these times. And part of that is for ourselves. And part of that is out of respect and reverence for the fact that we actually do have a lot more freedom than a lot of people. I think, Lee, that like Annie and I both are part of a community that includes folks who are incarcerated, and many people close to us have been through the prison system, or are still incarcerated and don't have the possibility to like put on a shark suit for a birthday party Zoom, or install like one of those bar games with like a little ring that you throw at a thing. I don't know what that's called, like on your porch. And like, those may seem like sort of small things, but like, I also, when I feel discouraged about carving out joy, I also feel like, okay, but like, I have so much to work with, even when it feels challenging. And I think we also try to do a balance of like, we have structure to go with the discipline. Like when we were doing those themed parties, we would like have a house meeting. And I feel like some people feel really like goofy doing that, but like, even if it's like literally you and your kiddo or you and your roommate, like you can have a house meeting and you can be like, what we did for those parties was like wrote down like an ingredient, a room, and a theme, and then had everyone, and we like do benefit from having a larger pod, but like we had everyone draw an ingredient, a room, and a theme, and then plan a party or like just like an experience around that. And we also had a series of like unbirthdays where we did a bunch of things that a person loved, even when it wasn't their birthday. So for mine, for example, like we, like other people planned it, but they like projected incredible like stars onto the ceiling to like create the starry sky, whatever.
Our roommate's mom made a like big construction paper outline of like
the Southwest Mesa landscape. Yeah,
so we had plateaus and a sunset like on our wall in like big paper.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, on the one hand, like most of us work from home. We have like more time and energy than a lot of folks. And we're also like incredibly busy people. And I just say that to be like, I do think it is possible to prioritize. And I think of like that, Adrienne Maree Brown's wisdom, or Octavia Butler's wisdom, filtered through Adrienne Maree Brown's writing of what you pay attention to grows, and like whatever muscles you strengthen get stronger. And that's just true, pandemic or not. And so I think if we muscles for creativity and joy and intervening on boredom, like when we practice them, they get stronger. That's definitely been true for me as a person who's not always considered fun and who doesn't necessarily always like games. Unlike some people like Annie who love games.
Yeah, and who's been playing games without me?
I know.
Her.
Pandemic personal growth.
Right.
You never know. You never know.
I think that's such an important, that you said a lot of things that are important to raise up. One being that having connections with other people who remind you of who you are, having connections with other people who add new things into your life. If you're not the kind of person who plays a game or naturally gravitates towards fun, I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are struggling with these days, is our world can get so small. And we forget that we have these options, and we forget that we have these incredible privileges to have the freedom to make these kinds of joyful gatherings and connections with each other. Staying connected with the world outside, to your point, remembering that not everyone's experience of this pandemic is the same and brings all of those great freedoms, reminds us that those are not to be taken for granted, and that we can invest in them, and we can use those to bolster us, to give us the joy that we need to keep going, rather than feeling like it's one more thing to worry about or one more thing that we don't want to have to think about. Being open to the world around us brings us pain and brings us joy, and all of that gets mixed together, and we decide what to do with it. Yeah.
And like, I mean, I'm definitely peak perfectionist. So I think another piece is like not letting perfect be the thing. And also like going with your strengths. Like definitely like cooking is something that has a lot of ease and joy for me. So like I've definitely gone hard and like Annie and I have gone hard in the like watching Claire Saffitz on Gourmet Makes and then making homemade tater tots per her instructions, baking adventure side of things. And like this is not the time that I have taught myself how to like code computers or play baseball, like
right.
So like I feel like there's also a sweet spot of like what are the things that already bring ease, and like for me, dropping by baked goods on like friends' doorsteps or something as a like pandemic, social distance way of staying connected, even if I don't necessarily get to have a lot of quality time, like that makes a lot more sense for me than like trying to start to play tennis because it's like the most pandemic safe sport, which for me is just going to be unpleasant and a fail.
Right.
So it's like, I think the right amount
leaning
of
further
like,
into the things you already
love. Yeah, and like vision, but not being like, oh, and now's the time that I'm going to like pick up 17 new hobbies that I've never actually had an interest in.
Right. Yeah. Or do the thing I think I'm supposed to do in this time rather than the thing that's calling to me. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So tell me a little more about these pandemic parties again. So you picked one person in your household drew an ingredient. So I'm guessing like to make food with some ingredient focused on it. And then what were the other two things?
So there was a room in the house, and a theme. So like one of the themes was like mermaids. One of the themes was like sparkly. So they were wide ranging. I think one of the themes was like apocalypse or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
written up by one of you and thrown into a hat.
Exactly. We all wrote a theme and put it in a hat. But if you have a smaller household, you can maybe have friends submit ideas to you or something, or you could team up with other folks. This is something I've suggested to some of the people I know who have, smaller, like they have a couple or they have even just one person alone. is to like get together with some other folks virtually and give each other themes. And then you can like show off what you created, you know, virtually to your friends who, you know, maybe created something on their own theme, or you all did the same theme or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And the on birthdays is even sweeter. So it's basically just, as if I'm getting it right, like you're investing time in creating an experience that someone in your house will love, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
How did you go about did you rely on things you already knew about the person, or did you interview or ask each other, like both?
We mostly relied on what we knew, and I think it was also like the sweetness of having something planned for you. But it also like was a creative project, like for our housemate Joe, like we were like thinking, oh, she like loves pasta.
Yeah.
She loves like beautiful landscapes. So we cooked a bunch of pasta food
to Italy.
And we like projected on the wall like a tour of the Amalfi Coast. Yeah, we're thinking about for Halloween, we're doing some like reverse trick-or-treating of like bringing baked goods to various friends of ours, maybe doing some trick-or-treat like in our house, like having different rooms be like different themes or something. Also, maybe we're all being characters from Steven Universe, which I personally never seen, but the 5-year-old has decreed it, so we will fall in line.
The tiny emperor of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you think it changes your experience at this time to have a child in your home?
Yeah, definitely. And I know Elizabeth has a noon meeting.
Yeah,
One of the so she's taking off. But one of the many blessings that have kept us from being bored is also that we are very busy, as she mentioned. Yeah, I think having a kid makes it different. And I think, you know, my experience of having a kid, because I've always, you know, since she was born, we lived with Elizabeth and other housemates along the way. And that I think has been really helpful for me to feel like my life didn't get sort of like overtaken by parenting, that I still had a really strong sense of like, I am me, I am doing my life and like figuring out how to do it with Moira, or finding something else for her to do or whatever. But I mean, I'm really lucky because she's just like really adapted quite easily. She's the right age for this to have not been like, she doesn't like miss her friends because she didn't really have friends yet. She was in preschool. So she's been really joyful, and, you know, she's along for every adventure pretty much. But, you know, a lot of those parties we did were not like with her. We like had them in the evening after she was in bed. But we did do one that she helped throw that was a tea party in the afternoon that she was really pumped about. Or we would include her in like the first part of the unbirthdays. Like we'd have like a dinner part that she was part of, and then she would go to bed and we'd have like some more adult activities or whatever. So we've mixed it up.
Yeah. Did she get to have an unbirthday also, or no?
You know, we did not make it to her unbirthday, but the pandemic isn't over. So the problem, it's not a problem. The thing that is true is that everyone in our house was born between August 4th and September 25th.
Wow.
All 5 of us. All
wow.
5. Yeah. So we had to pack in a lot of real birthdays in the past 2 months. And so we had to put a kibosh on the unbirthdays for a while. So we will resume unbirthdays after birthday season is over.
Oh my gosh. I love the unbirthday idea in particular. That's really nice. Why not have more opportunities to celebrate each other? And I like that it's something that you can do in your home with the people in your home, but it's also, like you said, something that you could adapt for doing virtually, doing with other people outside of the house.
Exactly. And I think it really helps to commit to it. Like Elizabeth said, like we are people whose lives are very full. You know, we both do a lot of unpaid organizing work in addition to our paid jobs. And it would, I think my tendency under stress is to fill my life with tasks that feel productive or like feel morally good. And I think I would have an unfortunate tendency, if left to my own devices, to do a lot of like working type things until I like didn't have any juice left, and then I would just sort of like collapse, you know, and not prioritize the joy. And I felt like it's almost like you're on one of those like balancy boards that have like a ball on the bottom, and like you're constantly like trying to
like lean, and you never find like a stable spot. You're just always like leaning, like little more rest, little more joy, little more work, little more fitness, little more sleep. Like you're always just kind of rolling around trying to find what you need. But the fact that we like made it house projects of like everyone in the house is gonna throw a theme party in a room, or like everyone in the house is gonna get an unbirthday, then it's like a commitment. And like we talk about it at house meetings. We're like, when's the next unbirthday? We got to schedule it in our Google Calendar, you know?
Yeah. Structure is really useful for things like that. And
structure, yeah.
Structure, and also the community of having a group of people. I mean, you're a minister at a congregation too. Like this is why church happens every Sunday at the same time. You know, it's whether or not you show up, whether or not you can make it, whether or not it's as good as you think it could be. There's a lot of value in that ritual of saying like we're gonna commit to this, and we're gonna give it our whatever level of offering we can give it for that day, and that's still meaningful. Yeah. How often did you do the room party things? Was that like a chunk of time, or have you been doing those like once a month the whole time?
So that was really at the start of pandemic. At the very beginning, you know, I think a lot of people were like, what's happening? And so yeah, we were like, well, we are gonna just get the joy. And like I said, I mean, you know, everyone has their own experiences of what might have made the pandemic particularly hard for them. I think, you know, for us in our house, it was like one of our housemates is a chaplain going into the hospital, and also like her mom is sick, and like that's hard. And like, you know, we were in touch with a lot of people who are in jail through our work with immigration accompaniment, and that was really hard because they were terrified because of COVID in jail. And so we were like, okay, this shit is really hard, and we are gonna like get really serious about our joy. So that's when we like committed to doing the theme parties. We like one night I was like, oh my God, let's do this. And then we sat around the table and wrote all our themes, and we just scheduled them at house meetings. Like every week we started having just like a little bit of a house logistic COVID check-in too, of just like, oh, what are our COVID norms and how are we doing on them, and how's the big grocery shop or whatever. And so we'd do that, and then we'd like be like, and when's the next party? So it became part of our routine to schedule them, and we just find a night that worked.
You know, the routine of having a house meeting is also probably something that a lot of people maybe don't have as an experience in their life.
True.
You know, the fact that you all are you know, you have your partner and your child, and you also have two housemates, and you have this big home. That is a model of living that makes it necessary for people to, actually, I think probably most models of living, it would be helpful, but it's maybe more natural for you all to think, we should have a dedicated time that we talk about who's doing what in the household, and is this working? And often nuclear families living together don't take that time. Is that something that you also, that's something I'm sure that you did before the pandemic, but is that something that's weekly for all of you? Oh, really? No, more
I mean,
now?
we did occasionally, but honestly, before pandemic, it would be more of a thing where like, oh gosh, a whole bunch of things have come up, or it's time to winterize or whatever, and then we'd have a house meeting. Also, what is true is that the shape of our household changed in the last fall. So Joe, who lives with us now, moved in when another housemate moved out. And so, you know, that was also like mixing it up a little bit. And I think we started shifting things maybe a bit more after that. But yeah, but we didn't have weekly house meetings till pandemic. And it really was starting in as a like, you know, when information about COVID was constantly shifting, and like, it was like one of those things of like, well, how are we managing what we're doing as individuals in this collective together? You know, what risks are we taking and not taking, and like, you know, and Joe being in the hospital, and you know, all of that. So, so yeah, that was a COVID thing, but I would highly recommend it. Lucas and I also like have regular check-in meetings about parenting. I don't know if other parents do that, but I think it's, you know, it's a good idea to just set aside that time regularly as a household, whatever shape your household is in. And even if it's just you, because like my closest friend, she lives, you know, well, she has one roommate now, but she's spent much of the pandemic really just being her own little pod.
Her own roommate.
And so we like set time to check in, the two of us, about like, okay, what is your structure, and like, how are you gonna like, you know, so even if you live alone, you can check in with, you know, somebody else who doesn't live with you. I think it's really important.
Yeah. Well, and speaking as someone who lives alone, I've found that it was really important for me to even just have a regular time of checking in with myself, like scheduling, planning to sit down and ask myself those same questions. Is my routine working for me? Do I need, am I asking too much of myself in every day? You know, do I need to give myself a set lunch time in order to make sure that I actually get up and eat lunch and don't just work through it? Yeah. So those kinds of things are, and that's a really important thing to remember also, that in those times, it shouldn't just be about, am I getting my work done and am I basically surviving? You know, how am I making time for replenishing myself, for joy, and remembering that in this mix of grief and newness and new opportunities that this time is opening us, that's all combined and mixed together in a big emotional mush. You know, that there's space then for me to say, okay, these are the things I can't do that I wish I could do, and I can be with that feeling, and then I can say, okay, what can I do? Because there's still so much, as you all are obviously showing, you know, there's so many things that we can still do that are wonderful and might be exactly the kind of things that we would have struggled to make the time for before the pandemic, that now are in some ways more available to us if we're finding ourselves with time on our hands. So
I mean, it was funny. I would say actually I had a weird feeling near the beginning, after I sort of got over the first like initial shock of like, what? I was like, I might like this better. And then I felt really bad because obviously it's a horrific thing and I saw so much suffering. And that made me horrified and very upset. But for my personal life experience, for a while, I was like, oh, I really don't mind this. I love my housemates. I'm so lucky. Like, I love the people I live with. And I was like, I just get to have wild parties with them all the time. And I don't have to drive to Bedford, where I work at a church in the suburbs. So I was like, I can't say I hate that. And then over time, you know, I got old, and now I'm like, okay, I would really, a different life would be better. But
the option,
you know,
the option would be nice. Yeah.
But it's true, because I think, you know, I've had to pull back on some things that I might have done a little more regularly. But when we've set aside the time to do one of these things, like, you know, we've really gone all out in a way I would not have. Like, I bought a mermaid costume from the internet for my mermaid themed bar that was in the bathroom. And I got like dye to dye the bathtub water teal and stuff like this, and I never would do something like that. But because we were like gonna go all in, I was like, I'm going all in. I might be cooking much simpler dinners on a regular basis, but when it's time for mermaid party, it's gonna be great.
It's gonna be 100% mermaid party.
100%.
Yeah. For the 5 of you, and maybe especially for the 4 adults in your house, what's the balance of like introvert, extrovert? Like, is there anybody in your house who really needs their alone time?
There is.
Is it you? Is it someone else?
No, I'm the biggest. Okay, this is a funny thing. I'm the extrovertiest of the house, which I find funny because Elizabeth is actually the one who I feel like is the most around people and around in the common space. But no, Lucas, who lives here, is a big time introvert. So we're sort of on a spectrum, like Lucas, Joe, Elizabeth, me, of how much people time we need versus alone time. And Lucas has a space in the basement that he has created of totally his own. And this was a pre-pandemic thing. It's really like a setup. He's got like a hammock and like a little like TV cozy watching nook and art supplies and art projects and like puppets he's built and like musical instruments, and like he goes down there like all the time, and that's like his thing. And it's like he's down in the basement doing his thing. So, you know, it did take a little bit of a toll on him. He got a little stressed about the parties because it felt like a pressure thing, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is a lot as an introvert who likes to do really solo art projects. So I think it's, you know, we do try to figure out what that balance is, and to make sure that if the obligation for joy starts to cross into a really big life stressor, like then you got to do something different. Like, we've postponed, like 2 of the unbirthdays got postponed by a week because it was like we're not ready and we're just stressed now because we're like, well, who's gonna make that and order that thing? And like,
yeah, I was supposed to do this and you were supposed to do that so that I could do that. And
yeah, exactly. And then it becomes like a stress. So I think we're trying to push it to that point where it's like prioritized enough that you're gonna like stick with it even when you're a little bit like, no, I'm too tired, but not so much that it goes over into like, I'm not ready for the party.
Yeah. We're gonna have fun, damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's so important too, remembering that like I think that happens so often, even in our work lives, even in church life, we'll be like, this has to happen by Sunday. It's like, well, Sunday's a bad example because sometimes things do have to happen by Sunday, but
they like, really do. I have experienced that.
Yes, but let me use a different, I will often for myself be like, okay, I need to do this by Tuesday and it's Monday night and I'm going to stay up all night to finish it. I'm like, wait, no. Stop for a minute and remember, why did it need to happen by Tuesday? And a lot of the times the answer is because I what's the word? For no reason, I decided it needed to be done by Tuesday, like 3 weeks ago. So actually it could be done by Thursday and that would be fine. Right. And, again, remembering the purpose of, if you're trying to have a party to celebrate a person, they probably don't care if it's on Tuesday or Friday,
exactly.
if that makes the difference.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. So is there sort of an understanding? Is that also something that you all share and talk about, that for your introvert housemate, that when he needs to go to the basement, we leave him in the basement, and that there's like a boundary there also that you guys try to hold to?
Oh yeah. I mean,
give him his time.
I think that's very more implicit than anything. But yeah, I think, the people who tend to retreat to their space, Joe has the attic bedroom, and so she'll go up to the attic and he'll go down Lucas has his basement workshop, he'll go down to the basement, and then I'm just always in the common space hoping someone will be there to talk to me. No, actually sometimes I need alone time too. Actually, that's one of the things that I've learned. I was like, wow, I had a retreat day for myself where I went on a solo hike, and I've never done that in my life. Wow. Just because I was like, why would I walk by myself if I could walk with a friend? But I was like, oh my God, I'm around people all the time now because I don't even have my commute when I'd be alone in my car with my thoughts. And I would sometimes pray out loud in the car or plan sermons out loud in the car, and then I was like, I don't have my commute anymore. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we all need to find that balance for sure.
Yeah. Are there things that you miss from life before March, like big things or small things, that you found a new way to incorporate into your life? I know for me, it was actually part of the commute thing. I would go out for a walk and go to the coffee shop every morning. And for a while, I was really missing the tiny little bit of social connection and fresh air and exercise. And then I thought to myself, there was sort of a mental switch I was able to throw when, instead of just like grumbling that I now have to make coffee for myself if I want to have coffee, like walking to the kitchen, making my coffee, stepping outside on my deck, which I'm lucky to have. I'm like, that's my commute now. Like it felt a little silly, to be like walking to the kitchen and going out on the deck. The deck is the commute, but it was a reframing for me that helped me like find that same purpose in it, which means that it's not a time that I'm also checking my email on my phone, and it's not a time that I'm letting that be that time, and I'm not doing anything else in that time. So that was my example. But are there examples of things that you missed that you found a new way to do, I guess is what I'm saying?
Not really. I think the things I miss the most are like large scale gatherings, because I do love to be in a large group of people. And, every year at our house, we usually have, because we have all those birthdays crammed together, right? Like I mentioned, we often have had a big September birthday bash where we invite like everybody, and just like, we didn't do that this year, and we didn't try to do something like it. And actually that works better for me usually, is like, yeah, we aren't having big giant parties right now, and that's okay. And what we're doing instead is like each birthday got its own thing, and in fact got multiple things, because all of us are doing a virtual birthday and a in-person pod and or like small social distance birthday. So like for mine, we're doing like a big Zoom thing where I invited like more people, and then like the next day we're gonna have like a little thing in the backyard with a fire pit and like just a couple closest people, like social distance,
So for me, just like focusing on, well, what is this time good for? Because I've never, a Zoom birthday is so unique because you can invite people. It was like the sweetest. Like Elizabeth's was at the beginning of the month. She's the September 4th. And, her parents were on there. Her uncle came into her Zoom birthday from his hospital bed when he had a surgery. And there were people from other countries. Her farmer friend was calling in from a yurt. So it's like, oh my God, when could you have that birthday party? Never.
Yeah.
But you can have it now. And so like, don't try to do the thing you can't do, which is have the big in-person open house. Try to have the thing you can do that is unique to this time. And that's worked really well for me. Or like with my best friend, we can't just come over to each other's houses. And she moved in pandemic and I haven't seen her room. Like I saw a glimpse of it yesterday when I came in to use the bathroom, very like, quick mask, use the bathroom, look in your room. But we've started this new thing now where we're going on little trips together where we'll get COVID tests and then we'll, pot up for the little trip and we'll go on a little camping trip or a little overnight Airbnb that we didn't, that wasn't a big part of our friendship before. So I think it's finding the thing that is like, not trying to replace it, but the thing you can do now that is exciting.
Yeah. And that's new or different or possible because of what we're doing. Yeah.
Right.
I was on Elizabeth's Zoom birthday party, and it was so sweet also to see that, one of the things that I think has been true for any kind of Zoom gathering is like figuring out the new patterns of how you socialize on Zoom. Like it's different. You're not in a room together. You can't wander over to one group and then talk to another group. And at Elizabeth's birthday party, I don't know if it was planned or if it just evolved that way, but basically people were giving her toasts and the whole
that was
party.
Planned.
Oh, good.
I planned it with 2 other people.
Good work. But it was so nice because that's just not, you wouldn't do that. And again, that makes a new kind of thing possible. That was so sweet it was so sweet to have, there must have been 20 or 30 or more people on that call.
There were so many people on that call.
Yeah. And just to have people share, a minute or two of like a story about her and why she was special to them. Like it was beautiful. I got teary-eyed at parts of that.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. No, it's huge. So there are some real perks in the pandemic. And I think finding grieving the things that are really to grieve and actually letting yourself grieve them and then finding the perks and really going for them. That's, I think, the recipe for like moving through with as much joy as you can.
Yeah. I'm looking at the prepared questions I had for you, which I feel like we abandoned in so many ways because we were trying to figure out the technical issues at first. But I think we have talked about a lot of these things. Are there any other things besides what you shared with us that you all have tried doing around the house to keep your life interesting? You've talked about, especially if you're just joining us, you've talked about kind of doing these theme parties. You've talked about unbirthday celebrations for people. Are there other things that are new for you all around the pandemic times that have kept things from getting too drab?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a combo of like Elizabeth mentioned earlier, like leaning into what we already know we like to do. So like she and I both share a strong love for cooking and baking projects, and we happen to both be really into this person who works for Bon Appetit named Claire Saffitz, who makes videos called Gourmet Makes. So if you're into that kind of thing at all, check it out. Where she makes homemade versions of gourmet versions of junk food, right? And it's super fun. So we used to watch those videos and occasionally talk about, oh, we should make it, make this or make that. And then I actually can't remember if we made the gourmet hot pockets during pandemic or before pandemic, but at any rate, we've been able to prioritize that more, right? And because that is one of the things we can do. So it's like, okay, like let's really do a gourmet makes project and let's set aside the time and commit to it and go for it. And so, that's something I did pre-pandemic too, or like I had a pie making discipline for the year of 2019. It was like my year of pies. So I did that pre-pandemic, but it's just like, and now like I'm going to try to really lean back hard into pies for the winter as like a winter coping. And like, I think that's great. Or like, something as simple as our whole pod watching a TV show together, like that was pretty not a thing before, but I think because like people would just have evening plans, and last night we all watched the last episode we hadn't seen together of Tuca and Birdie. It's a little cartoon show. It's very sweet. And it was just really sweet and fun that everyone in the house wanted to watch it together because we've all been watching it and we can be together more than we were before. So as long as you like who you live with, or at least like them enough to want to spend some quality time, then I think that can be a really sweet thing to lean into the connection with your house people.
Yeah, prioritizing. I found that there are times when it's been easier these last 6 months to prioritize stuff like that. That seemed like if you had other things to do, it didn't seem as important. But now,
Right.
I have friends that I have a regular Monday night. We watch something on television together and we text each other while we're watching it. Like,
yes,
that kind of thing has honestly, also because of the regularity of it,
right.
saved my extrovert self many weeks, from like,
Yes.
I know that I have that on the calendar. And it's not something that takes a lot of mental energy to think about how to plan or how to negotiate COVID safety around. It's an easy thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Definitely.
And new ways to have online connection, like in those Zoom parties. I'm thinking about other Zoom parties I've been to where if people haven't really done this before, you might think, how is that going to work? But Elizabeth's party was such a good example of just kind of like having people go around and toast the person who's being celebrated.
Right.
One of my friends had a birthday party on Zoom where he pulled up there was an article in the New York Times a couple of years ago that you might have seen, and it's like 60 questions to ask to get someone to fall in love with you.
Yeah, I have.
Do you remember that? So
yeah, I do remember that.
I mean, the headline is kind of silly, but they're basically like questions that draw out real, deep, interesting, intimate answers from people. And so his Zoom birthday party was he would ask one of those questions, and then anybody who wanted to could answer.
Oh my God, I love that.
So he'd have like 2 or 3 people answer, and then as soon as the answers died down, he'd move on to the next question, and he'd ask that one, and then people finding new ways to engage people that, again, like bring out more than your average party small talk in many ways, which is really nice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. And the Zoom parties I've been at that have been successful have not tried to do anything that you would do in a normal party space and have been very have had a clear facilitation, like a clear goal. Like I went to one where we all learned how to cross stitch together. Honestly, I had a blast. And then I got really into cross stitching for like a month and then I gave it up. Which I just have to say, I'm a fan of that. Like get really into a new hobby you've never tried and then be like, never mind, just kidding. Unless it's something super expensive. Like what's the loss there? Like I bought some thread and then I'm probably not gonna use it, or maybe I'll get back into it in the winter. Who knows? But it was really fun for that month when I thought my new hobby for life was cross stitching. It's not.
But it was for that month.
It was really fun.
Yeah, and you learned how to do something. Yeah.
I did. So yeah, definitely.
Well, it's almost 12:30. I'm noticing. I'm wondering. We do have some people watching. Thank you, Carrie. Carrie says loving this conversation, which is really sweet. Emily Detarbert was also watching and complimenting Moira's taste. I don't know if you saw that, Annie, on Steven Universe.
Oh, on Steven Universe.
Yeah.
Yes, Moira is a big fan.
So if anybody has any questions for Annie or Elizabeth in absentia about their household and boredom and creativity and how they've coped with this time, please type them in. And we've already talked a little bit also about, I think my last question was sort of, conversely for the people who are living alone, ideas for ways to connect creatively with others. And that's more my wheelhouse. I mean, some of the ways I have found are things like having routine show watching online parties, or Netflix party is a new invention that I've used, where you can watch something on Netflix at the same time and you can chat with each other. And,
definitely. Yeah, I think that's been key for my friend who I mentioned. Something that Moira has been doing a lot of, just to name, your mileage will vary, I'm sure, but she spends, people always are like, what? Before school started, she was spending 2 hours every morning talking to my parents on Facebook video messenger chat. Yeah. And my brother he got these like portal devices that like basically all they do is do video chat for Facebook, which is random. But anyway, so my parents have one and she has one, and they call each other on their portals and they like tell stories and play games and do all kinds of like imaginative play. So that's something that like we didn't hit on right at first, and then like a month or two in, like I was like, oh well, why don't you call your grandparents more? And then it was like, oh, you love this. I guess do it every day. And now it's like a thing. So you can also, play around with those virtual methods of communication. I know we all get like zoomed out, we get sick of it. But I think if you make it kind of, like do something different and more interactive, obviously that's one thing with a 5-year-old, it's a different thing with an adult, but I do think there is potential there. When I have had those catch ups with friends or something like that, it is nice, if you watch something together, or you like, maybe you both make a fun drink, or you make a fun snack, or, just do something that's a little more interactive, can make it feel less, like now I'm on another Zoom call.
I had a lot of Zoom calls, and also just like phone calls, like put somebody on speakerphone and we would be both cooking dinner together. Like we'd talk to each other while we were making dinner. Puzzles, back when puzzles were the rage. I went through a puzzle phase in March and April where I had a
puzzles.
I know. And I still have one that I haven't used. But that Abby Tennis, who's another colleague of ours, she and I would call each other on video chat and both be working on our puzzles while we talked. So it's like,
God, I love that.
And it feels more like you're hanging out with someone. It's less like we're staring at the screen and we're talking to each other. It's more like we're in the same room and we're working on a puzzle together, even though we're in different places working on different puzzles. It doesn't matter. So
exactly that. Yeah.
Well, Annie, thank you for joining us. I know you had a busy morning, and we had quite a lot of fun trying to get the tech to work, but I'm glad that we figured it out.
Always a challenge. Well, this was delightful. I think it's such a sweet thing, and I'm really glad we could join in Elizabeth while she was here.
I know.
Yeah.
Give her a hug for me.
Share some of the joy. I will.
Thanks so much for sharing some of your experiences. And if people have questions or anything, hi, Laura. If anybody has questions or anything, you can always add it into the comments later. And Annie and Elizabeth are both tagged on the post, so they'll see that too. So, all right. Well, thanks. Have a great rest of your day, Annie.
Bye.
We'll get off live now. Bye.